on the air with new evidence from the January 6th committee that the march to the Capitol that day from former President Trump's rally outside the White House may have been pre-planned, with witness after witness laying out that they knew he should have conceded and that the riot was potentially dangerous. Ahead, we've got more details on that. Plus, oh, by the way, the end of hearing bombshell that was dropped by Vice Chair Liz Cheney. Did President Trump engage in witness tampering? Plus, as all that's happening in Washington about the former president, the current president, he's about to be on his way to Israel, the first stop on a super important trip to the Middle East that's going to include a visit to Saudi Arabia. We're live in Jerusalem with a temperature check about how folks are feeling about it. We're also learning tonight about new video from inside Robb Elementary School the day of the Uvalde shooting, the shooting that ended the lives of 19 children and 2 teachers. Why there's a fight over whether the public will ever get to see it. Plus, as if you needed another thing to worry about right now, New York City's dropping a new PSA on what to do if there's a nuclear attack. The question everybody's asking, seriously, why now? We're also going to take you to a faraway place nobody has ever seen before. Are you a space nerd? You should be after looking at this. Deep space in color with a new understanding of how galaxies interact thanks to an incredible new telescope. We're going to have that later on in the show. Hey, I'm Hallie, and listen, this is the bottom line from the January 6th committee. So many people close to the former president knew he should have conceded the election way before the attack. So many people knew this rally could be a problem, to the point that at least one person said they were too scared to go to sleep the night before. And that things in the West Wing were getting off the rails. Okay, setting aside, by the way, let's press pause on that other bombshell on witness tampering. We're going to get to that in a second. Let's start with the other off the rails piece of this thing. That bonkers meeting on December 18th between so-called Team Normal, right? That includes ex-White House counsel Pat Cipollone, who we're hearing from for the first time on camera. And then there was that other group of lawyers, outside advisors, Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, Mike Flynn, who were pushing some, listen, real talk, insane and false and made up conspiracy theories, pushing them directly to the president. And to give you an idea of just how, in one witness's word, unhinged it was, yeah, listen to what went down in a meeting on December 18th. Watch.
Probably no more than 10 or 15 minutes.
Was in that...
I bet Pat Cipollone set a new land speed record.
I'm going to categorically describe it as, you guys are not tough enough. Or maybe I put it another way, you're a bunch of
Flynn screamed at me that I was a quitter and everything, kept on standing up and turning around and screaming at me. And at a certain point, I had it with him. So I yelled back, either come over or sit your effing ass back down.
Okay, so a couple of hours after that expletive-filled meeting, early morning December 19th, we get this tweet from the former president that the committee believes connects the dots as a call to violence on January 6th. The tweet, in part, says, big protests in D.C. on January 6th. Be there. Will be wild. That's the key part. But that may have not even been the original version. There's now an early draft in the National Archives where the former president was going to say to people, we're going to march to the Capitol. Okay? People listened, with the panel showing an email from at least one group that moved the date of their planned gathering to a different date, to January 6th, because of that tweet. Other right-wing figures changed their plans because of it, too.
Why did you first decide to go to D.C. for January 6th?
When the president of the United States announced that he was going to have a rally, then I bought a ticket and went.
It's not like people didn't know that this thing could get violent. You had one Twitter employee testifying anonymously, at least in public, saying they couldn't sleep the night before. You had a Republican Congresswoman, Debbie Lesko, warning beforehand that people were going to go nuts. There were posts like this online asking if the police are ready to die on January 6th. And then there were the actual words of pro-Trump media personalities.
You better understand something, son. You better understand something. Red wave. Red wave. This is going to be a red wedding going down January 6th.
You don't have to be a Game of Thrones fan to know that a red wedding is not something you want to see. It's mass slaughter, right? Which brings us to the people who were at the riot. Many of them from extremist groups, at least some of them from groups like the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys. And one former Oath Keeper was really clear about what he felt the danger the former president was causing was all about. Watch.
This could have been the spark that started a new civil war, and no one would have won there. That would have been good for no one.
Our team's covering it from every angle. We've got Ali Vitale live on Capitol Hill for us. We've got Ryan Riley standing by and Vaughn Hilliard live in Arizona. Ali, let me start with you, because if you look at these sort of buckets of takeaways here, which you know we like to do on the show, there's a few of them.
Yeah,
Number one, Donald Trump. The committee's trying to link these dots, right? Connect these dots between his actions, the tweet that we just talked about, that meeting, et cetera, what Donald Trump was saying publicly, to the violence on January 6th. So bucket one, Donald Trump, the committee tried to show, had power over this mob, could egg on the rioters, and then could call them right back off, as we learned from Mr. Ayers. There's also this other bucket. The march may have been pre-planned, only designed to look spontaneous, but that, in fact, there was discussion previously about having people march to the Capitol. And then this third bucket here, this idea that there were links between people who were outside advisors to Donald Trump, Roger Stone, Mike Flynn, and then these far-right extremist groups. But I have to say, Allie, all this talk about buckets, and I'm going to dump like a fire hydrant on you, because Liz Cheney did, where at the end of the hearing, she says, hey, there's this question of witness tampering, perhaps, from former President Trump himself.
Yeah, heck of a cliffhanger there, especially after we went through an entire hearing that was bonkers in terms of what it told us. That meeting inside the White House, all of these different buckets that you laid out, there was a wealth of new information there. And then at the end, that new information, that new cliffhanger that seemed to be coming in real time, the vice chair of the committee, Liz Cheney, saying that a witness who we haven't seen or heard from yet, and I was just on the phone with a committee aide who said that that means that this is a person who we, the public, have not seen, but the committee has been talking to, obviously, that this witness received a call from the former president himself. They declined to take that call, and they told their attorney about it, who then in turn told the January 6th committee about it. The committee is placing this as if it's a pattern of witness tampering, if not from Trump himself, because this is the first instance that we've heard the former president directly placing calls to people, then certainly from people in Trump's inner orbit, potentially on his behalf. The idea, for example, that Cassidy Hutchinson or other witnesses were receiving text messages saying that he, maybe Meadows, maybe Trump, knows that they're talking to the committee, knows that they're loyal. The idea of witness tampering, of course, and witness tampering itself is a crime. The question would be, of course, whether or not the committee has enough to prove that that's what was happening here. Nevertheless, the big question right now is, who is the person that Liz Cheney is talking about? It appears that both the chair and the vice chair of the committee know the answer to that, but the other rank and file members who I've spoken to don't know, and certainly none of these people are sharing it with us.
Wait, real quick, do we know if there was like a voicemail left, Allie?
We don't know if there was a voicemail.
Okay.
We don't know if it was just a missed call.
Okay, let me put up, because you were in the room as this hearing was happening, and there was a couple of moments that caught our attention. Video right after the testimony. One, you had one officer, Ganell, sort of wiping his eyes at one point when the hearing sort of invoked his sacrifice. And this, Stephen Ayers, who testified, and that's Officer Harry Dunn that he just gave a hug to. Somebody who is, and there's that emotional moment with Officer Ganell, excuse me, Sergeant Ganell, I should say.
Yeah.
You know, this is somebody, Allie, who is being prosecuted for being at the Capitol the day of the riot, who is now, at this extraordinary moment, back at the Capitol, hugging the officers who were trying to defend the building that he was in that day.
Yeah, the layers to this moment were immense for the people up here who know these officers and who are still very raw from what happened on January 6th. It is a day that changed the way that people who come to this building every day come to work. And so for that man, Stephen Ayers, to be someone who broke into the Capitol on January 6th, now invited back through its doors to testify under oath about what led him to do that, doing so mere feet away from officers like Sergeant Ganell, I asked him what that moment felt like, especially because afterwards, Ayers went over to the officers immediately, hugged them, and in the case of Harry Dunn, at least, told him, I'm really sorry. Here's what Sergeant Ganell told me about that. Can you talk a little bit about what Stephen Ayers said when he came over to you?
Basically, he just apologized. I mean, I didn't come in contact with him on January 6th. I think he was just apologizing to me, I guess, on behalf of everybody else, since we are part of the public image of the Capitol as of right now. I just told him I don't take it personal.
I mean, the empathy that he used and talked with in that moment was really stunning for me. But I know that these officers, from Gunnell to Dunn and all of the others who have been front row at many of these hearings, for them, it's their way of saying that they are standing there bearing witness and hoping for accountability as the committee teases out more and more information about the 6th.
Hallie, Vitaly, I'm so glad to have you there covering all this for us on the Hill this week. Thank you. Appreciate it. Ryan Riley, let me bring you in here, because one of the other big themes here was the committee trying to show, and you really heard it in Congressman Raskin's closing, that Donald Trump's lies ruined people's lives. Right? That was what they're saying, whether it's Stephen Ayers, Mr. Ayers, who we were just talking about, whether it's Sergeant Gunnell, who is now no longer in policing because of the injuries he sustained while at the insurrection. I want to play a little bit of what Mr. Ayers had to say.
Would it have made a difference to you to know that President Trump himself had no evidence of widespread fraud?
Oh, definitely. You know, who knows? I may not have come down here.
So why'd you decide to march to the Capitol?
Well, basically, you know, the president, you know, got everybody riled up, told everybody head on down. So we basically were just following what he said.
And that speaks, Ryan, to the power that Donald Trump had over some of the folks like Mr. Ayers who showed up that day. You cover these people who went into the Capitol that day as they're now facing consequences. And I think it's important to remember the vast majority of them are not members of the Proud Boys or the Oath Keepers. It's people like Stephen Ayers.
That's right, and a lot of them, you know, have gotten their lives pretty torn apart by this. You know, if it's legal bills, it's having to come in and get sentenced, it's spending time away at prison potentially in a lot of these cases. You know, there are 2 individuals who were sentenced just today while this hearing was ongoing, got 60 days each, and a couple who's going to go away for a long time. And, you know, not only that, a lot of these individuals have spoken to just this forever mark this mar that's going to be on them for the rest of their lives. Their Google results are forever changed. A lot of them lost jobs. There's been a lot of divorces sparked by January 6th by people who had disagreements about, you know, with their spouse going into the Capitol. And it is really remarkable because, you know, there is different paths that people can take where they can either choose to, you know, say now that I recognize that, okay, I got tricked, I got fooled. But that's a tough pill to swallow, to admit that you basically threw your life away in many ways because you got fooled and weren't smart enough to not realize that these were lies about the stolen election. That's tough to sort of swallow and recognize, and I think that's what Stephen Ayers was doing here. But a lot of the individuals, you know, they still have to sort of grasp to that because it's part of their being. It's part of, they think they're the smartest people in the room. They think that this was true. They think that the election was stolen, and you know, even though it's going to tear their lives apart to a certain extent, it makes them feel better to think that they were at least fighting for something that was just, even though it's, you know, obviously, as we have laid out here, all bogus and all crazy.
One of the tasks that this committee had was to connect the dots, and as they put it, between these extremist groups, the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, which you also cover, and members of former President Trump's inner circle, which at the time of the insurrection consisted of these outside advisors like Mike Flynn, et cetera. Did you hear anything new or perhaps more effective from the committee today as they laid out the evidence about those links between these groups and those individuals like Stone and Flynn?
You know, I think because we heard that testimony from Pat Cipollone, I think that some of the information that they were going to bring forward got a little bit shifted back. They shifted the focus a little bit because they had all of this new incoming information. So there is a lot more, as I know, a lot more information that the Proud Boys, or that the committee has about the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers that didn't necessarily come out. That said, I do think that they laid out how there is sort of the shared common understanding. And remember, a lot of those folks who are going into this meeting, as described, are directly connected to the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys. So I think that they emphasized that certainly for the American people. But I definitely would put a pin in that. There's a lot more to come down the line about some more of those ties between the individuals who are involved in this legal effort to overturn the election and the individuals who actually stormed the U.S. Capitol and tried to take over the government on a physical basis.
Put a pin in it and circle back, Ryan. Boy, you are a creature of Washington. I love it. There's nothing that people in D.C. like to do more than do that, and ping people too. Before I let you go real quick, if you're at the Department of Justice, what is your biggest takeaway from today, right? What are they hearing and listening to as there's now these questions, as Hallie laid out too, about potential witness tampering from President Trump, about some of these conspiracy issues too?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to put it in two buckets, I would say that the Proud Boys stuff and the Oath Keeper stuff, they've got a lot of that already, right? This is the investigation that's been ongoing. They've have more power, frankly, than the committee does to seize a lot of these records, a lot of the individuals they've talked to. I think there, in certain circumstances, there's going to be instances where they're going to want to compare what was said to the committee with what was said to them, what was said to a grand jury, what was said in court, what was said during an FBI interview. There's certainly instances there, but I think, what we've seen so far is that the committee's really been able to move the ball forward, especially with that Cassidy Hudson testimony in regards to Donald Trump's inner circle. And there's been, reporting from the New York Times about how that's really advanced the investigation. So I think that's what the committee is really paying really close attention to on the White House side of things these days.
And I should say, Ryan, we're getting some breaking news that is literally just into us from our colleague Ali Vitale, who got off our air and got on the phone and is now confirming first to NBC News that the next and presumably last hearing from the January 6th committee is expected to be next Thursday in prime time, Ryan. So that is when we anticipate the big finale hearing happening. Obviously, we will have coverage here on NBC News Now as this news is coming into us. Ryan Riley, always good to have you with us, especially on a day like today. Thank you. I want to bring in Vaughn Hilliard now, who is live for us out in Arizona covering all things Donald Trump. Vaughn, this is an individual you've been covering for a while. I was struck by something that Stephen Ayers said, and this again, I think this was, when you talk about the live witnesses, this was particularly, I think, objectively compelling testimony from somebody who was representative of the hundreds of people who went into the Capitol, who were there, who went in that day, talking about how angry he was then and how angry he is now for a different reason. It's anger directed at Donald Trump for having pushed these lies with no evidence to back it up. Here's what he said.
It makes me mad because I was hanging on every word he was saying. Everything he was putting out, I was following it. Got people still following and doing that. Who knows what the next election could come out. They could end up being down the same path we are right now.
How much is that a sentiment that you hear from folks on the campaign trail when you're out at these rallies and events for former President Trump, Vaughn?
I can tell you that there's thousands of folks that are still showing up from Nevada and Alaska rallies here this weekend. And he just announced overnight that he's coming back here to Arizona later this week, in which he's expected to have, again, several thousand. And I consistently hear from supporters of the former president, Republicans who are sympathetic to the big lie and the continuation of the propagation of the conspiracy theories by Donald Trump here. This is an offensive game that Donald Trump is playing. There is no regret. There is no remorse for what happened on January 6th in his public comments. He is going into these states, essentially his version of the campaign trail, and making the case that the election was taken from him. And by and large, the numbers, the polling plays out. Look at this poll that came out here just this morning from the New York Times and Siena College, in which 75% of Republican voters nationally said that they felt that Donald Trump was just exercising his rights to contest the election in those weeks after the 2020 election. Again, 75% of Republican voters are sympathetic to the actions of Donald Trump, up into the point of, at this point, in which 6 public hearings had been conducted, in which damning evidence and damning testimony was presented against the former president. And yet, this is still such a marker for the former president. And I want to note here, Hallie, is look at an event on Saturday here, right? The leading gubernatorial candidate in Arizona, Kari Lake, who will be standing on stage with him, has called for the decertification of the election results, has made part of her campaign pitch that there should be perp walks in which there should be elections officials from the state of Arizona who should be arrested and jailed for their part in the 2020 election. Again, on what evidence? It's very unclear. Yet it is at the forefront of the minds of these top Republicans who are running for statewide office and potentially the former president as he flirts with his own 2024 bid again.
Flirts, I think, heavily is fair to say. Vaughn Hilliard live for us there in Phoenix. Vaughn, thank you for being on top of this for us. Appreciate it. So we've talked about this investigation into the former president. Let's talk about the current president doing something very different, getting on a flight, getting on Air Force One to head to Israel in just a couple of hours from now. It's his first stop on a trip to the Middle East, and it's coming at such an important time for him on both the domestic and the foreign fronts. So the White House is saying, listen, the focus over there will be on things like ending the war in Yemen, on terrorism, on normalizing Israel's relationship with other countries in the region. But there are other big issues that will probably come up, especially when the president heads to Saudi Arabia. Like, what are they going to do about oil production? Given the record high gas prices we have seen here in the U.S., gas prices that have started slowly to go down. There's also the human rights issue, and this is a big one. You have the president set to attend a meeting that Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman will also attend. Remember, MBS, as he's known, he's the guy that the U.S. intelligence community said was behind the murder of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi back in 2018. Carol Lee is joining me now. And Carol, it feels like President Biden is getting on Air Force One to get to where you are, stepping into potentially some real landmines here.
That's right, Hallie. If you look at this visit overall, start with Israel and then Saudi Arabia, you'll see the president trying to balance these concerns and the pressures that he's under when it comes to issues like human rights, and then what the White House and administration sees as his strategic objectives, and that is to get some things on issues like Iran and stability in the region and oil in Saudi Arabia in particular. So he's arriving here in Israel. There's a lot of anticipation about this visit. There's all of the traditional trappings, the American flags, the Israeli flags, welcome banners. There'll be a ceremony at the airport, but there's also a little trepidation here. And part of that is over the issue of this killing of the American journalist. There's also Palestinian, who the administration has said that they've left that inconclusive. They sided with the investigation and saying that it was clearly that it wasn't exactly clear. They couldn't pinpoint the bullet coming from the Israelis, but it was likely did. And that has really upset some lawmakers who sent a letter to the president in advance of his arrival here saying, hey, we want more information and we're not happy with this. At the same time, her family is saying, we want to meet with you. We're not happy with this. A letter from her brother. He says he hasn't received a response yet. So there's that aspect hanging over this, these issues of human rights. And then there's what the president wants to try to accomplish, which is to show solidarity with Israel, to try to send a message of unity on Iran, even though they are not entirely in agreement. And so you'll see him walking that line here in Israel and then again in Saudi Arabia.
Let's talk about the Saudi piece of it, too, because the president it's felt like he's kind of downplayed the possibility of how much the focus will be on oil, bringing up oil prices on this trip. You have to look at the reality, which is that this is a country that's the world's second biggest oil producer. Is it not inevitable, Carol, that this is going to come up?
Absolutely. It's there's no way it doesn't come up. And the White House has said, yeah, it will come up, but it's not the whole of the issues that we're going to talk about. There's all these other things that we want to discuss. But look, the president said that he was going to make Saudi Arabia a pariah during the campaign. He's since gotten into office and he's seen oil prices go high. He's battling that politically at home. And so, of course, oil is at the top of the agenda for him in going to Saudi Arabia. And the problem the president has, or the risk, is that he goes and he doesn't get anything tangible to show to the American people. The White House is really lowering expectations, Hallie, saying even if he does get something, it's not something that Americans are going to feel for months, not weeks or days.
You talked about it a little, Carol, but help us understand a little bit more about how the president's going to thread the needle on this human rights stuff, especially in Saudi, especially considering the pressure he's under from Democratic leaders.
Look, this is going to be the key thing. The president's not expected to take questions at a press conference while he's in Saudi Arabia, so there won't be an opportunity to ask him about this publicly while he's in Saudi Arabia. But the question is going to be, did he raise Jamal Khashoggi in his meeting with the Crown Prince and King Salman? And if so, how? And what did he say? And the White House is going to have an answer for that. That's what everybody who's criticizing this trip wants to hear from him. He's not going to make a lot of people happy either way, but there's a lot of pressure on him to do something and show that he is not just going there because he wants Saudi Arabia's oil and that it's okay and everything that happened in the past is no longer needs to be discussed.
Carol Lee with that Jerusalem Dateline for us here tonight. Carol, thank you. Safe travels, and I'm sure we'll see you again tomorrow. Appreciate it. So that's one presidential trip. How about a different trip for a different president on a very different topic? This is Russia's President Vladimir Putin. And this morning, the Kremlin is coming out announcing this big visit he's going to make over to Iran next week to meet with Iranian and Turkish leaders. Why? Russia needs an opportunity. Right now, they need some serious help militarily and economically because, as you know, Western countries like ours, like the U.S., have given Ukraine a lot of that since the war there first started. This trip's announcement is coming just 24 hours after we heard the U.S. say Russia's looking to get hundreds of surveillance drones from Iran, even maybe drones that can actually fire missiles. It's not clear whether these drones are already on their way to Russia, but the U.S. has info that Iran is getting ready to train Russian troops on how to use the drones as soon as this month. Ali Arouzi joins us now. And Ali, it's not like we see Vladimir Putin gallivanting the globe in the last couple of years. He hasn't traveled much at all outside Russia since the pandemic. So this trip is significant, it is symbolic, and it is intentionally timed to this moment, right?
That's exactly right, Hallie. I mean, look, he's made 2 trips out of Russia since the pandemic. One was to Turkmenistan, and the other one is in Iran, and he's meeting the Iranian leadership on both of these trips. So it really speaks volumes about this new world order he wants to carve out, and it really underscores this very strategic, close alliance between Iran and Russia. 2 countries that don't have a lot of friends in the world, 2 countries that are very, very heavily sanctioned by the U.S. So the timing is no coincidence, and now he wants to lean on people that he's been supporting on at the UN Security Council, like Iran, with all of these sanctions, and he's calling in a favor now. He's going there and he's saying, you've got to help us in this war with Ukraine, and the Iranians are backing him on this. They haven't denied that they're going to send these UAVs to Russia, hundreds of them apparently, according to the White House, and they're both reconnaissance ones and combat ones. And as we know, UAVs have been pivotal in this war.
Ukraine has gotten a lot of military assistance from Western countries. We know that, as you talked about, it's more than $7 billion from the U.S. alone. Have we heard any reaction from Ukraine on this piece of it, Ali? And can you give us a sense of sort of a status update, if you will, on how the ground war is going for Ukraine?
Well, we haven't heard anything from the Ukrainians about this, but this is going to be worrying. Look, let me just say that this isn't going to be the sort of high-end weapons that we've seen the U.S. give Ukraine. The Iranians and the Russians even don't have those sort of capabilities, but it is going to be a big help to the Russians. UAVs are pivotal in this war. Iran has been manufacturing them for a long time, and they even have a factory in Tajikistan, so that could bring another country into the play making these sort of things. And it's just not going to help Ukraine when another country is giving them hundreds of these weapons that are so important on the battlefield. So it's not going to make anybody here in Ukraine very happy, that's for sure. And on the ground, things are not great here. Look, the Russians continue to pound the Eastern Front. That attack we saw in Chasiv on the apartment building is turning out to be one of the worst in the war so far. They've killed 45 people in that attack, including a 9-year-old child. That's probably the 3rd worst attack that they've done in this war. But I've got to tell you, Hallie, as well, the Ukrainians are starting to fight back. Those MLRSs that the U.S. are giving them are having an effect. You're seeing them hit Russian military and weapons depots every day, and that may be tipping the scales in their favor.
Ali Arouzi, live for us in Kyiv. Ali, thank you for being up for us tonight. Appreciate it. Coming up here on the show, could you imagine, look at this, seeing this coming at you? You're not seeing anything here, but there it is. A huge avalanche rushing toward them. We'll tell you what those hikers did. Plus, a selfie-snapping tourist falling into the crater of Mount Vesuvius. How he got out, that's one of our 5 things right after the break. Just as we were coming on the air, edited surveillance videos showing what police were doing when a shooter was inside a 4th grade classroom and inside Robb Elementary School in Uvalde have been released. You're looking at video here obtained by the Austin American-Statesman and KView. It was edited down by them, including captions that are added. Audio, by the way, you see the captions on the screen, the timing. Audio has been removed. We're going to show you some pieces of this. It is extremely disturbing. I want to just tell you that right up front. You need to know that. This May 24th video has gotten more attention over the past week, with families growing increasingly angry, they say, upset about the account that has so far been incomplete, in their view, of what actually happened during this massacre, where a gunman stole the lives of 19 little kids, 19 children, and 2 hero teachers. Officials say police waited more than an hour after the shooting started before confronting the gunman who died. Leaders investigating the shooting said they'd plan to show families the video Sunday, first to people who live in Uvalde and then to the public after that. Well, now that these videos are surfacing, it's not clear if they're going to update that timeline. Let me bring in Tom Winter. And Tom, I think we showed some of this, and I want to explain to people what they're seeing. Again, I can't say it enough. It's not enjoyable video to watch in any way. It's awful and it's upsetting. There is a video that shows the shooter's entrance into the building. And then at one point, and I'm going to kind of narrate as we're talking here, you're going to see a little boy, I believe, coming out of the bathroom, or at least coming around the corner. This little boy who's, here it is, his image has been blurred. if we can roll the next piece of video here. You're going to see a little boy come around the corner, see the shooter, and then go back to wherever he was, a student, I should say. We don't know if it's a boy or a girl. You can see the editor's note there. There's a little boy in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. The video goes on to show, for example, the first entrance of police and then later video of the police that were assembled there. Tell us a little bit about why this video is important and some of the reaction to it, because already that reaction has been pretty fierce.
It sure has, Hallie. I think when you look at this video, it indicates to us a couple of different things, having watched it, having actually seen active shooter training involving law enforcement. First off, for the families, I don't know if it changes anything for them from a timeline perspective. I don't think any answers at this point are going to be long-term helpful for them in understanding the reason why nobody moved forward to that classroom once more reinforcements arrived. Frankly, once this person who you just saw on that video started shooting and started firing at police officers. This video, we're looking at it now, of this child coming around the corner, parent to parent, is extremely difficult to watch. A couple of things stick out to me, Hallie. First off, this shooter clearly did not feel any sort of pressure from police, did not feel as if they were on a clock. That's a law enforcement term a little bit. In other words, they were not rushing. They were methodical. They were moving from place to place. It speaks to their mindset. I think it speaks to potential planning here, and I think we're going to hear a lot more about that in the coming weeks and months. That's the first thing. The second thing is you see law enforcement here entering the school, doing what they should have done, which is initially going right towards where this was, but then they're fired upon. That's why you see them retreating there. And then you see what objectively and law enforcement experts will say is a chaotic response. It's not clear who's in charge. It's not clear what's going on. You see in the upper left there, that's a body camera video of people, kind of standing around. Are we coming up with a plan? Are we going forward? And it isn't until an hour later, after all of this is assembled, that this final push towards the classroom that we're watching occurs. And so they eventually obviously shoot this shooter and this suspect. But Hallie, in the meantime, he's firing rounds and there are kids that are bleeding in that classroom. And it's just going to be very difficult to understand exactly what it was that happened here. You also see, and I'm not sure if we're going to see it in this particular clip, an instance in this video where even as they're charging the classroom, there are other officers telling officers don't move forward. I mean, at that point, when is the time to move forward? Right. You're charging the classroom. So it's going to be one of the most valuable tapes for training for law enforcement in the future. Hopefully, if there is a silver lining out of this, or if there's anything that gives these poor parents some solace, it's the fact that this video might help a further incident from happening again, like the way this incident happened in Uvalde.
We've shown the parts that we can show, so we're going to drop that video at this point, Tom, because it is, as you note, it is a tool. It is also incredibly emotional and difficult, I think, for parents in Uvalde, for any parent to watch. Let me ask you sort of more broadly, big picture. This accountability question has been a huge factor in the Uvalde shooting, and a lot of the questions have fallen on the school district's police chief, Pete Arredondo. I understand in a few hours the city council is going to discuss his resignation. Do you know anything else about this, Tom, as we've heard about frustration and dissatisfaction and finger pointing on a lot of different sides of this?
Right, Hallie. So, this is still the police chief for that school district. It is approaching the middle of July. Kids are going to have to go back to school at some point soon, and he is still conceivably the person in charge of school safety for that community. I don't know how that sits with that community and its leadership, and certainly the parents of this school or the parents of the other schools there. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens. I've never seen a situation like this where there hasn't been accountability from a job loss perspective. Maybe there are things here we don't know. We have not heard from Arredondo in a long time. We have not heard further clarification as these videos have come out. And, there's been finger pointing, Hallie, but it's difficult to point fingers when the evidence, in this case, the video, is right in front of us.
Tom Winter, thank you. I know this is a developing story. I appreciate you jumping in front of a camera with that instant analysis. I appreciate it. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, the U.S. military says an airstrike has killed a senior ISIS leader earlier today. U.S. Central Command says the man killed was the leader of the Islamic State in Syria. Officials say he was working on developing ISIS networks outside of Iraq and Syria. Number 2, a hiker in Kyrgyzstan caught this moment that a huge avalanche, look at that, rushed towards his group. Oof, that's scary. It's moving real quick, right? folks he was with managed to hide behind a rock. That is what saved their lives. That's incredible. Nobody was seriously hurt. Think about that. Number 3, a 23-year-old American tourist had to be rescued this weekend after falling into the crater of Mount Vesuvius in Italy. An official there says this guy and his family, you can see the injuries there, hiked to the top through this forbidden trail. That's where he allegedly stopped to take a selfie, dropped his phone, and then fell into a crater trying to get it out. The crater, not a crater, Mount Vesuvius. He managed to stop himself before falling too deep into the thing, but you just saw there the bruises on his back. Guides had to use a rope to get him out. The volcano is still technically active. Number 4, First Lady Jill Biden is apologizing for saying that Latinos are as unique as San Antonio breakfast tacos. She said that in a speech at an Hispanic Unity Conference in Texas. She was apparently trying to compliment Latino diversity. The National Association of Hispanic Journalists responded to the speech by saying in part, quote, "Do not reduce us to stereotypes." Her spokesperson later tweeted that the First Lady apologizes that her words, quote, "conveyed anything but pure admiration and love for the Latino community." Number 5, the latest Emmy Awards are out for this season, and your favorite folks from Succession, great theme song, by the way, lead the way. 25 nominations. After that, The White Lotus and Ted Lasso have 20 nominations each. Squid Game became the first non-English language show to be nominated in the Outstanding Drama Series category. How many of those have you seen? I'm like 2 for 4. That's not bad. Still to come. Why the Biden administration might let everybody, including adults, get a second COVID booster. But would people even do it if they could? And then later, another twist in this just ongoing legal drama here. A grand jury expected to indict South Carolina attorney Alec Murdaugh on murder charges. Remember him? We got more later in the local. Okay, so here's one for you. Should all adults get a second booster shot? That's apparently the question that top leaders inside the White House are asking themselves. The talks coming as we're seeing more and more COVID hospitalizations because of that BA.5 subvariant of Omicron. You've probably heard about this, right? BA.5. Right now, only people over the age of 50 and people who are immunocompromised can get a second COVID booster. But some experts are getting more and more worried that the immunity for younger adults could be going away, basically. Today, during a White House COVID briefing, some officials said people who were infected with COVID during the first Omicron wave may not have much protection against these new subvariants like BA.5. Let's bring in medical reporter Erica Edwards, who is joining us now. Erica, it's good to see you. Second COVID boosters. What would have to happen to get there, and what are the chances we'll actually see them?
Hey, Hallie. So right now, health officials are looking at one thing, and that is that rise in hospitalizations that you were mentioning, as well as the potential stress that those hospitalizations could put on an already stressed healthcare system. I can tell you that every single state except for 4, New Mexico, Maine, Alaska and Hawaii, are seeing those rises in COVID-related hospitalizations. I've talked with doctors nationwide over the past 24 hours. They're all telling me that they are indeed seeing that uptick in hospitalizations, really in all adults ranging from age 20 up through their late 80s. Now, remember, it was in March during a previous surge of another Omicron subvariant, BA.2. That was when the FDA and CDC greenlighted that second booster for those ages 50 and above, as well as those with weakened immune systems. Hallie?
If they did greenlight a second booster, Erica, do you think people would actually go get it? Because right now, for the population that can go get it, only about 30% of them actually have.
That's right. And, the messaging here is a little bit tricky because, we now know that BA.4 and BA.5 really don't care whether you've been vaccinated or whether you've had a previous infection. That's that waning immunity that you were talking about. Still experts say they insist that the booster remains the best way to reduce your risk for severe outcomes, complications of COVID-19. During that White House briefing today, Dr. Ashish Jha, the COVID coordinator, said that if you are eligible for a booster, get it now.
Erica Edwards, thank you for that reality check. Appreciate it.
If you have not gotten one this year, please go get another vaccine shot. You are eligible for your first booster or second booster, wherever you are in your vaccination schedule. If you've not gotten a vaccine shot this year, go get one now. It could save your life.
I'll also just say quickly that if you get a booster now, experts say it does not preclude you from getting another one this fall when we anticipate new versions of the COVID-19 vaccines to become available, those targeting these specific subvariants We expect those in October or November. Hallie.
Great info, as always, Erica, and great soundbite, too. Thanks. Appreciate it. Coming up, the big U.S. city. It has a lot of people wondering, why in the world are you warning us about nukes? What? We got that coming up. Plus, how a good Samaritan got nearly 24 people off this sinking boat. We've got that in the local. All right, a little bit of breaking news to send to us in the last couple of minutes. Do you want Twitter drama? Do you want to hear the drama about Elon Musk? Because, boy, we got it. Twitter is now suing Musk to try and force him to commit to his bid to take over the country. Remember, Musk is the world's richest guy. How long have we been talking about this whole saga? Weeks, right? Musk, just on Friday, accused Twitter of violating its purchase agreement for not turning over some details about, like, spam accounts, bot accounts on the site. That's after Musk had agreed to buy Twitter at $54.20 a share back in April. And Twitter is saying, too bad. You want to pull out, but guess what? That's the price we expect to get. So I'll do the math for you. That's more than $44 billion. In a statement, the company is saying that, in their words, Musk apparently believes that he, unlike every other party subject to Delaware contract law, is free to change his mind, trash the company, disrupt its operations, and destroy stakeholder value. Musk hasn't commented on this thing yet, but place your bets on how long it'll take him to tweet about it. We'll be following this one for sure. NBC News covers lots of stories like that one, hundreds of them, in fact. And because you couldn't possibly read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their region in a segment we call The Local. Our Western Bureau reporting on that terrible wildfire threat against giant sequoias in Yosemite National Park. It got worse overnight, but the fire is still partially contained. All of those sequoias are still standing. They are not, so to speak, out of the woods yet. It's still really hot out there. There hasn't been many wind. It hasn't been super windy, so that's a good thing. Officials set up sprinklers to try to protect the sequoias, too. Out of our Southeast Bureau, this week a grand jury is expected to indict South Carolina attorney Alec Murdaugh on murder charges in the killings of his wife and son. That's according to 3 sources close to the investigation. Remember, his wife Maggie and son Paul were found shot to death last June. Murdaugh called 911 saying he found their bodies. He's already been indicted on dozens of financial-related charges. From our Northeast Bureau, the Coast Guard says a good Samaritan helped get 22 passengers off a sinking party boat. Look at this. Happened in New Jersey. Officials say the boat slammed into a bridge before starting to take on water. It began listing to one side. You can see what happened. Somebody nearby came and ferried the passengers over to a pier. Luckily, nobody was hurt. Today, the New York City mayor is answering the question that a bunch of people are asking, which is, why are we getting warned about how to stay safe from a nuclear attack right now? Like, what? That's after this new PSA started airing, explaining how to do just that. Keep yourself safe from nukes, with Mayor Eric Adams saying, hey, don't freak out, no need to panic, but be prepared. The odds of a nuclear attack, pretty low. But city officials at the Office of Emergency Management want to make sure you know what to do to stay safe if it ever came to that. Pretty basic stuff. Go inside and stay there. But people are wondering, what is up with the timing of this message? Isa Gutierrez explains.
So there's been a nuclear attack. Don't ask me how or why, just know that the big one has hit.
New York City officials releasing a PSA on what to do in case of a nuclear attack. Their instructions: get inside, and stay tuned.
PSAs like this seem like a waste until something bad actually happens. And then they are potentially very valuable.
But no need to evacuate just yet. In a statement, the New York City Department of Emergency Management saying that, quote, the likelihood of a nuclear weapon incident occurring in or near New York City is very low.
There's no specific threat. We've received feedback that, not surprisingly, this scenario is something that people don't feel prepared for, and they ask us for advice. So, this was an effort to provide some straightforward advice around a difficult topic.
Mayor Eric Adams adding that the move comes amid rising tensions in Ukraine.
I'm a big believer in better safe than sorry. I take my hat off to OEM. This was right after the attacks in the Ukraine.
Is a nuclear attack something you think about at all? Is that on your mind?
I don't think about it that much just because it seems so far-fetched.
Although the PSA targeted New Yorkers, it's a message some experts think could resonate with the nation overall.
My sense is better education would be helpful. Just knowing some basic things like, again, stay inside.
And no, staying in the car is not an option. You need to get into a building and move away from the windows.
Do you feel prepared for a nuclear attack?
No. Not by a long shot.
I don't know what I would do. Maybe that doesn't sound very intelligent, but I really don't know what I would do.
PSAs like these were common just a few decades ago.
First, you duck, and then you cover.
And they may become common with groups like the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, sounding the alarm. They manage the doomsday clock, designed to warn the world about man-made threats like nuclear war, amongst other issues. Recently, they set the clock for 100 seconds to midnight, saying in part, quote, Russia's invasion of Ukraine has brought this nightmare scenario to life, with Russian President Vladimir Putin threatening to elevate nuclear alert levels, and even first use of nuclear weapons if NATO steps in to help Ukraine. This is what 100 seconds to midnight looks like.
Nuclear attack is unfortunately a real part of our world, and I think the risk will only grow over time. Having said that, I don't think that people should allow concern about nuclear attack to dominate their everyday lives.
Issa is joining us now. Can we please not have one more thing to freak out over? Like, do we see, like, please, New York City, like, do not give us one more thing to stress out about. I know that one of the people that you talked to said, hey, this is not just a message that could resonate with New Yorkers, but people all over the country, right?
Yeah, absolutely, Hallie. And experts are saying that the U.S. as a whole really isn't prepared. And like you heard from those folks I spoke with today, they really don't know what to do in case of one of these emergencies. Columbia University's Center for Nuclear Studies in 2018 said the U.S. and its citizens is not prepared for any type of nuclear disaster and its aftermath. And you look at a lot of the emergency preparedness websites across the country for the different states, and many of them don't have information for this type of situation, telling people what to do or how to prepare. But people can go to ready.gov if they are interested in how they can prepare for this type of event. Some of the things that they say is, number one, look for possible shelter locations. It's got to be somewhere that you are often, school, home, at work, that sort of thing. Ideally, underground in a basement would be best, but if not, in the center of a building. Also to look for shelter locations along your commute if you are a commuter. They also say that you can build emergency supply kits, including bottled water, battery-powered radios, emergency medications, and that sort of thing if you are concerned. But again, like you heard from the mayor and from others, this is not something that is high risk right now by any means. We don't want to make it sound like that. It sounds like the city really just wanted to get ahead and make people feel more prepared if they are concerned.
Issa Gutierrez, thank you for that. I will still put it on my things to worry about way later plate. Appreciate it. When we come back, NASA says they're the deepest and best images of the universe we've ever seen, showing cosmic cliffs and dancing galaxies and stars being born. Think about that. What we're learning about the first photos released from the James Webb Space Telescope after the break. Now to what our executive producer calls a real bong rip of a segment. So get ready. If you ever wanted to ponder the insignificance of your existence inside the vast expanse of the universe, fire up the vapes. We are doing it, because look at your screen. You're looking at how stars thousands of light years away are born and how stars die. We're about to show it to you. A light year, 5.8 trillion miles away, by the way. We're also getting to see how galaxies that were first seen more than 200 years ago grow and interact, all from NASA, sharing some of what you're looking at from its $10 billion space observatory, a telescope that looked farther than the universe, and than anybody in humanity has ever seen the universe before, the James Webb Space Telescope, 30 years in the making. We got a little bit of a sneak peek 18 hours ago when President Biden showed off the first full-color image. Take a look at how that compares to what we were able to see with the much lauded, the much vaunted Hubble Space Telescope launched back in 1990. Look at the difference between these pictures, right? On the left is from the Hubble, taken over 30 days. On the right is the picture from Webb, which took 12.5 hours. This is a huge deal as it relates to our ability to understand more about the universe. And nobody knows that better than former NASA astronaut Mike Massimino, who's joining us now, also a professor at Columbia University. Mike, we're so glad to have you on. Thank you for being on the show today.
My pleasure, Hallie. Thanks for having me.
Help us, like, this is heady stuff, right? When you look at this, it's like we're a speck of a grain of sand on top of a tiny grain of sand on top of a little other tiny grain of sand on a huge, you know, this is incredible. Talk about the significance here.
Well, but just in my opinion, we are very significant as well. Our planet from space is beautiful. It's a paradise. We're very lucky to be here. But yes, we are just in one little small place in the universe. I love that, by the way. Yes. Yeah. Just to set the record straight.
No, you're right. And I don't mean that. I just mean from the perspective of like contemplating our position in the universe. Yeah, we are unique. We are paradise. I 100% am with you. Yeah,
but yes, the immensity of the universe is staggering, and the more we learn about it, the more impressed we become with it. What this telescope was built for, what Webb was built for, and you mentioned Hubble, this is the next generation of a telescope that we have available to us. It was built for two reasons, particularly. One was to be able to see deeper in the universe than any telescope ever had before, trying to get to the edges of the universe from when the universe first began 13.8 billion years ago. And the image that came out yesterday kind of shows that they're able to do that. A very clear image of a deep field, a cluster, a galaxy cluster with remnants of galaxies in it as well. Those swoops that you see is actually light being bent from galaxies that are beyond that. And then the second major goal is to analyze atmospheres of far-off planets, looking for signs of habitability as we know it, something that might be Earth-like or something that might be able to support life. So it's off to a pretty good start. And these are just the beginning, these images that we've seen so far.
Can you explain what people mean when they say that this telescope is kind of like a time machine?
Yeah, that's almost exactly what it is, because as we go deeper and deeper, as we look further and further, if you look 10 feet away from you and then you look a mile away from you, the light that it took longer for that light to get to you that was a mile away, right? So that's an older image than what you're seeing up close. It took longer for that light to reach you. So when you start talking about miles and millions of miles and then light years and millions and billions of light years, what you're doing is you're seeing light. It took that light, for example, in that cluster, 4.5 billion light years away, that major cluster, it took that light 4.5 billion years to reach us. Okay, so what we're doing is we're seeing old light, really. We're seeing light that is 4.5 billion years old. So as we can keep going further with this telescope, I said there were some remnants that are even older, 13 billion light years old. So you're looking further and further back. You're seeing older and older light. And the idea is that you want to go as far back as you can to the beginning of the universe and see what that looked like.
So fair to say that this has exceeded expectations, these early pictures?
Yeah, it's pretty. These are just, these are the early release images, and
this is the appetizer, you know.
This is to make sure that the telescope works and to whet your appetite. When I went to Hubble, we had these early release images, and I was thrilled because it showed we didn't break the telescope. This shows that the telescope is working, and there's a lot more to come.
Mike, it's so good to have you on to talk about this. I so appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you,
it's just an incredible story. That does it for us this hour. It's good to be with you. We'll have more for you tomorrow, same time, different place. I'll be back in D.C., but we'll see you then. Coverage picks up right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.